Today we're riding into some dangerous territory. In fact, you could get shot depending on what you want to put in it. We talking whole dried chili or chili powder? Beans? Huh, or no beans? Yeah, that's right. We're talking Tejas chili. And don't tell me about no can if you know what's good for you. Actually, since we're in California, we're gonna be kind of doing it my way. China traditional, not traditional, but anyway, it's gonna be good. My interpretation, as far as a can, there's nothing wrong with a can. American or Texas chili is like the equivalent of Italian bolognese. You get 10 Italians in a room, there's going to be 10 different ways to do bolognese properly. It's all interpretation. There's a roadmap, and then you kind of take it from there and do what you want, because that's part of the fun of just getting in the kitchen and doing it. So don't worry about anything. I would say go ahead and let's try this together, right? And see if you like it, and then you can adjust, because now you get in tune with your food, all right? So let's go through the ingredients and I'll show you what we got to start here. I've got 3 pounds of chuck roast. I have 1 pound of ground beef. It's 80-20, meaning 80% lean, 20% fat. Don't really want to do more than that because it's too lean or it's too fatty. So I think 80-20 is really good. I got 2 green bell peppers. If you want, you can use orange, yellow, or red, but it's gonna taste different. The green bell peppers are basically just unripe peppers, so they're gonna have a different flavor profile. The ripe ones are gonna be sweeter. And actually, you know what? You could actually combine the two if you wanted, but I typically put green in here. Got 2 yellow onions. Got a bunch of garlic. I'm not going emerald on you, don't worry, because we're not gonna make garlic chili, but I kind of pre-chop my garlic. And I use so much of it, I keep it in the fridge for like, I don't know, 3 days in a neutral oil. That way I don't have to keep chopping it. But we'll cover that some other time. You gotta have chili powder. Now, here is where you gotta pay attention to what kind of chili powder you're using. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I do have to say, and I don't get anything for this, but I've been so impressed with this company, Oaktown Spice Shop. If you walk into that place, if you're in the Bay Area, I'm not in the Bay Area, but I was up there on a trip, it is phenomenal. Their spices are so fresh, and they've got stuff that I've never seen before, and it's really amazing. So you should check them out. Again, I don't get anything for this, but I was so impressed. You should look them out. I got, like I said, guajillo chili powder. Then, since we're talking chili, you gotta have cumin, you gotta have your coriander, and I've got some Mexican oregano. Mexican oregano is different from Mediterranean oregano that you normally find in the store, because Mediterranean oregano is related to the mint family, and this oregano is related to the lemon verbena family. The two families talk every once in a while, but they really don't come together that often. That said, if you can't find the Mediterranean one, the Mexican one, go ahead with the Mediterranean. Some tomato paste, apple cider vinegar, 2 secret ingredients, soy sauce, cocoa powder. We have brown sugar, dark brown sugar, some crushed tomatoes, salt and pepper, of course, butter and oil for sauteing, 2 cups of beef stock or broth, and another secret ingredient that I like to put in, Guinness. Now, if you don't want to use Guinness, you don't have to use it, but I do think it gives it a nice, deep flavor, and the soy sauce gives you some umami going in there, and I just think it really kind of blends together and makes this amazing, deep, rich chili. So there's really not a heck of a lot to do in prep once everything is measured out. So why don't we get started? If you'd like, you can go ahead and download the recipe and follow that way, or not. Because I always say, read it and leave it. And I'll get into that a little bit more, okay? So we're gonna start with the green bell peppers, but I need to get something out of the way first. There are some people out there who are running around saying that the 4-nubbed bell pepper is the female of the bell pepper species, and the 3-nubbed bell pepper is the male of the bell pepper species. And the two come together and I guess have little baby bell pepper.
Hey, this is a family show.
That is false. So this is just a bell pepper. It doesn't really matter if it's got 4 or 3. You really won't see one with 2, but it really doesn't matter. So as long as your bell peppers are nice and firm and smooth and they're not bruised, they're good to go. Cut off the top. We're going to use that. Cut off the bottom. Then you have something that looks like this, right? Place the bell pepper on your board thusly, and you're going to use both hands. This one is going to slice through the pepper. This one is going to roll it away from the knife as you're cutting. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be cutting through all these membranes as you're unrolling the bell pepper.
Rolling, rolling, rolling.
And at the end of the day, what you end up having, it's kind of cool really, is this strip of bell pepper, right? So you have the outside here, turn it over so the inside is up, and then I go ahead for this chili and cut 1/2-inch strips. You know, depending on the size you want, you would cut it in 1/4-inch strips or 1-inch strips or what have you. And then cut the strips into 1/2-inch cubes. This is like my favorite little helper. Bench scraper! This guy, I swear to God, you gotta go out and you gotta get one. It's not just for pastry, it's not just for doing like, you know, dough and gnocchi and pasta or whatever. You can use this for so many things, like, see all this stuff? I don't want all this stuff on my board. Pick it up. See how easy that was? Oh my God. So I can do the same thing with this too. Yeah, I'm telling you, you gotta go out and get one. I've got 2 onions, and this one is on steroids. It's a bit big, which is fine. I think the recipe calls for 2 cups of onion, but you know what? If you end up cutting up some onion and you get 2.5 cups, it doesn't matter. If you get 1.5 cups, don't worry about exact measurements when you're cooking. The more you focus on the recipe and doing exactly what the recipe says, the more you will screw up. Why? It's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, well, I'm paying attention to the recipe, it should have come out right. No, it's the exact opposite. Reason being, everyone's equipment is different. Everyone's interpretation of a recipe is different. Let your food tell you if it's ready for the next step. Now we're going to attack the meat. Here we have that 3 pounds of chuck roast, and this is a pretty nice one. There's not a ton of fat on it. There's some marbling. And if you do see parts that have quite a bit of fat, like here, right, or here, just trim it off. I'm not going to go ahead and worry about all the fat on here. I'm going to just kind of take that off. And I got a little bit of meat on there. I don't want to waste. I always hear my mom in my head, don't waste it. Don't waste it. Put that back. Don't waste it. Cutting up something like this for a stew, you'll hear sometimes, in general, you'll hear, cut your meat against the grain, otherwise it's tough. Well, this is true, but that happens to be applied to cooked steak or a roast or something like that, not to meat that you're going to be stewing. So when you got to cut up something for stew and whatnot, just cut it up however you need to cut it up. So these are about maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 thick, somewhere in there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but whatever you end up cutting, as far as width, thickness, you want to make sure that whatever that is, that they're all that way. Reason being, you want them all to cook at the same time, right? So if you have some that are like really tiny, then you have some that are really big, then the tiny ones are going to completely fall apart. The big ones are not going to be cooked through. And then you're going to be like, what? I'm chewing on some of it and I'm kind of, the other one's mushy. And so you want to make sure that they're all relatively the same, volume-wise, right? They don't have to look the same exactly, but just volume-wise, if you will, they should be about the same size. Just remember, fat is flavor, fat is your friend. So we got 3 pounds of cubed chuck, 1 pound of our ground meat, and we got everything else ready to go. There's no other prep. So why don't we mosey on over to the stove and get this thing going. Okay, I got a slightly different approach to browning the meat for chili. This is the pot, cast iron enameled pot that we're going to be cooking it in. But to brown the meat, I'm going to be browning it in a cast iron skillet. Reason being, if you try to brown the meat in something this deep, you're not going to get a lot of air circulation. So you're going to end up really sort of steaming it as opposed to browning it. But with a skillet, it's pretty shallow and you get a lot of airflow. So you get a lot more browning. Other than that, the most important thing to do is to really heat your pan until it's stupid hot. And I mean stupid hot. So when I put the oil on here, you're gonna have to wait for it to smoke because it's gonna explode right away. We're gonna go ahead and put the oil, just enough to sort of cover the bottom. You're gonna brown your meat in batches. Very important not to overcrowd the pan. This will make a mess, and in your house, if you have one person that cooks and another one that cleans, who cares? We don't want to put meat, when we're doing a stew, just into a bunch of liquid. Even though it's flavorful, right? You want to build flavor. And one of the first things you do when you do a stew is you brown whatever it is that you're making, whether it be pork or beef or lamb or what have you. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I've got the pan on high heat. I'm not taking it off high heat. It's just gonna stay on high heat. And I'm probably gonna brown this in 3 batches based on the side of my pan, right? If the size of my pan was bigger, I could add more meat, but you don't want to crowd. You can see that I've got some room in here. I don't have all the meat butting up against each other. So you'll see I'm not getting a lot of moisture because it's evaporating the moisture because I got enough airflow and they're not kissing. You'll also notice that we didn't salt and pepper the beef before putting it in. Reason being, that will also extract a lot of moisture when you're sauteing or browning pieces of meat like this. We're gonna salt it afterwards once it's in the liquid. So now I'm just breaking up the ground beef, but I'm not going to keep breaking it up. I'm just sort of spreading it out right now. Break it up! And once it browns on that side, quote unquote, you start mixing it around, let it brown on that side, quote unquote, and then start mixing it around. It's really more about the technique. And once you know the techniques, like I said earlier, then you just get into it. And now you have total freedom. Because you realize, oh, I've done this 10,000 times. It's not like, you don't have to make a recipe 100 times and say, that's the only recipe I know how to make. Because there's so many techniques you use in different recipes that now you can apply that to other recipes. Now when you're browning ground meat, you'll notice, you'll get some browning, but you're never gonna get brown, right? Like if you're doing a steak, it just doesn't work that way. Which is fine. So just, get it as brown as you can. The rest of it will sort of be grayish. You can't prevent it. I've seen techniques where you go ahead and you do all kinds of strange things with your ground meat in order to get all of it brown, but I don't know, I don't see the difference. At the end of the day, when you're done with the dish, I don't really see the difference. Now I'm gonna swap this out and put that big guy there. I've got it on high, I'm warming it up, but I'm not making it super hot, stupid hot. I'm just heating it up because if I put the butter in there, it's gonna burn. So there we go, melting. You add the veggies. Sort of like this, like the meat, just let it sit, let it start to brown a bit, right? And then toss it a little bit, let it brown a bit. Toss it, let it brown a bit. There's no need to keep stirring. And really, even in a chili or something like this, if you get a few pieces of onion that are like pretty brown, As long as they're not burned, don't worry about it. So I've been sauteing this for about 8 minutes, and we've got some nice light browning on here. And you see all this fond on the bottom there, all that brown stuff? Don't worry, that's all flavor. This is all flavor. It's better to put more garlic than not enough, but don't put so much garlic that it turns into a garlic chili. Now, earlier I said we were going to talk a little bit about the chili. When you buy chili to make chili, make sure you get the right chili for the chili. There's so many different kinds of chilies out there, right? So you got chili d'arbol, you have cayenne pepper, you have guajillo, you have the ancho, la 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 la. You even have actually chili powder for chili, which actually has other things in it, like garlic powder, onion powder, some other spices and whatnot, which you can use. This is just 100% guajillo chili powder, and I really like this flavor. Ancho chili powder is really good too. However, don't put this much chili d'arbol powder or cayenne pepper or hot pepper or whatever in here. I don't even want to think about it. Don't go there. Very important to put spices into hot fat, because that brings out the essential oils. You always want to cook the spices in whatever fat you're using. So now we got our cumin, coriander, Mexican oregano, and bay leaf. Everybody goes in at the same time. Also very important, the tomato paste. As I was saying earlier, whenever you use tomato paste, you always want to cook that in the fat. Cook that in the fat. The apple cider vinegar, the soy sauce, and don't worry, it's not going to taste like Chinese chili, but you get some really nice umami. Brown sugar, and I always like to use dark brown sugar. Trust me on this. Just trust me on this. Go with it. Just try it. Cocoa powder. Not a lot. Don't use the stuff you use for like hot cocoa though. Just you got to use like the real cocoa powder for baking. 1 bottle of Guinness for the pot, not you. And last but not least to the party, the crushed tomatoes. And last but not least to the party, Mr. Beef Stock himself, 2 cups worth. And at this point, you want to scrape up all that stuff from the bottom, right? Just sort of like, you can kind of feel where it's sort of stuck there, you know, kind of just go back and forth, grab that one. But look at that color. Oh my God. Is that a rich color or what? Looks like a really rich ketchup. No, it's like a rusty brown, a brownish red. I don't know. It's just really pretty. Under no circumstances do you throw that juice out. Don't look at it and go, ew, ew. You don't go, ooh. That's like, ooh, not ew. That's ooh, because that's all flavor. So put that ooh into the chili. And this actually, you can make it way ahead of time. You know, like earlier in the week if you want. You can actually even freeze it. Freezes very well. Okay, now that everything is in there, we're going to bring it to a boil. Then I'm going to lower it so it simmers. Put a lid on it and let it simmer for 2.5 hours. Just going to stir it every once in a while so that the bottom doesn't scorch. But other than that, there's nothing else to do. Okay, I couldn't help myself. I had to make a little bit of dog-safe chili for Jack. I think that's good. He loves this stuff. It's like going out for a steak dinner. Jack, chow's on. So, since we're in dangerous territory, we might as well just go all in and do something else that's controversial. What goes well with chili? Cornbread. Here's my interpretation of the cornbread that I like. We've got our stone ground cornmeal. That's actually quite important. If you can get stone ground, get the stone ground. And we have 2 cups, okay, of cake flour. I know. It gives you a nicer texture, I think. If you like cornbread that's on the cakey side. If you don't do it. And then we have sugar, granulated, baking powder, baking soda, salt. I'm using kosher. It looks like a lot of salt. Recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of salt, but it's kosher salt. If you're using table salt, use less, like 50% less, because it's saltier. 2 large or extra large eggs, 1.5 cups of buttermilk, 1/2 cup neutral oil, and straight out of the microwave drawer, 1/2 cup of melted unsalted butter, and 1 cup of corn kernels. You don't have to put it in. I kind of like the way it tastes and the texture difference and everything else. But this is pretty much my basic cornbread recipe. So into a bowl goes the cornmeal. Flour goes the sugar. Goes the baking powder and baking soda, and goes the salt. I'm gonna whisk that together. Once it's all blended together, I'm just gonna take the eggs. And I like to use, I normally buy extra large eggs. If you buy large, that's fine. If you buy medium, you're gonna have to use 3. We're gonna throw in the buttermilk. The butter, because life is better with butter. Oil. Now I'm using butter and oil instead of oil or butter for a reason. The oil will really give it a nice moist texture, and the butter gives it a nice flavor. Both of them are fat, right? That helps give you a nice tender cornbread. And then you put in your corn kernels. Boop. Now, if you want to do some variations on this, you can add cheddar cheese, you can add some green peppers, not bell peppers, but like roasted pasilla peppers and that kind of thing. You can put bacon. What I'm going to do is put it into a preheated muffin tin. I have a 375-degree oven going, and I have a muffin tin that's been heating in there. Use whatever kind of spray you'd like. This is just easy. I'm using a 1/2 cup measure. That way they're all about the same size. I'm gonna see if I can get a 1/2 cup in here. You don't wanna go too much, that's a bit much. So maybe a 1/3 cup would be good. Now the reason I am preheating it is I'm sort of mimicking what you do when you have a southern cornbread recipe. You make that in a black cast iron skillet, right? And you keep that in the oven, you're preheating it, and you've got your butter or your oil or whatever in there. And then you pour your cornbread batter into that, and it really kickstarts it, number 1. And number 2, it gives you a nice brown exterior. So I'm trying to mimic the same thing by preheating the muffin tin. Probably not gonna get the exact effect because it's not cast iron. So we'll put it into our oven, 375, middle rack, and now we just wait. So if you got cornbread, you gotta have honey butter. Really complicated. Butter, bowl. Doink, 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 doink. Just kind of swish it around. Then it's pretty much honey to taste. See how fast it is? Guess what's done? Chow's on. Oh yeah. Look at how rich that looks. The meat cooked down. Some of it sort of breaks down, some of it keeps its shape. You got the ground meat in there. Everything just sort of mingles into this really amazing texture. And we've got our cornbread. See those? That's a nice crown, isn't it? That's a beautiful crown. And brown bottom. Damn, that's good. And then basically serve it with all the traditional accompaniments. Some people just like it absolutely plain. Some people like to put Doritos or chips on there. For me, sour cream is a food group. Some raw red onion, I think the red looks pretty. And of course, for me, you can't have chili without shredded cheddar. And actually, you can even put some avocado in there if you'd like. My version of Texas beef chili, California style, made in Muso's kitchen. So let's try this. Oh man. Damn, that's good. It's so rich and tender. It's incredible. I think you need to try this recipe. So download it. And then actually, if you could share it, I think that would be great too. Everybody will love you for it. Like it, or like me, or like the show. Like everybody, I like you. And subscribe. In the meantime, what he said. Damn, that's good.